Oleksandr Mykhed is a Ukrainian writer. Until March 2022, he lived in Kyiv. He is now enlisted in the, or he was enlisted in the armed forces of Ukraine. So he's had that absolute experience of the necessity of defending his country and the sense of what that's like. He's the author of many books. I think this description says nine, but it may well have increased since then. He's also written many selected essays, and excerpts from his books have been translated into many languages as well. And we're going to put a list in the description of the video, as well as his cultural choices that form part of this conversation. And there's a longer bio if you want to check that out. And this isn't our first conversation, so please do check out our previous conversations, which to my mind have been one of the most insightful and fascinating that I've had the privilege of doing over this last 4 years. Oleksandr, welcome back.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure and always thrilling as well. Now let's turn to the war, obviously, which looms large in any of these conversations. And you're able to articulate something which I think for those who are sort of following or those who are deeply engaged in it is something that you sort of realize at a deep level, but don't necessarily articulate or bring to the fore. And that is that in some ways, private life, I think you've described, collapses into becoming historical evidence. So all the sort of memories and experiences that people in normal life would sort of lay down and don't feel the need to record it because it's not of any historical moment necessarily. It's very private and personal. It seems that in Ukraine, the lines between these two things, private life and public life, have sort of collapsed, certainly in wartime. That must also add a certain intensity to the memory or recollection of what's happened in this period.
Yeah, definitely. And this is really interesting because I think it lays exactly in the nature of the invasion. Because if we, for example, if we look on the images after the huge drone or missile strike, you'll see that the wall is actually disrupted and your apartment is open to the wider audience, and you will see that your private is now across the media. And I think this might be a really nice metaphor for what the private life is during the invasion. I think this is really important in terms of the point of view of a narrator, of a storyteller, because the horror of the invasion is such a huge scale that the only way is your own perspective, and telling through your own perspective, it will give you the overview of what it is for one particular human being. And still think that having all these pieces of made in different cultural spheres and through the different experiences of different artists and different media, and as well as those who are just being the war crime investigators or reporters or something like this, it might give just a small glimpse of what the real invasion is.
The other thought occurs here as well, and this is a sort of, I guess, a two-part thing. It's almost comparable on a mass scale, on a national scale, to what happens, let's say, when someone's the victim of crime and the worst crime possible, let's say murder. Suddenly, everything that was personal and private, including your name and a very awareness of you, which you could go through life and history would completely erase your existence after a generation or so. But if you're the subject of a crime or a murder, suddenly you lose control of your own narrative, your own story. That seems to me to have be happening on national scale to Ukraine. You've lost, in some ways, control. And not only is this a struggle to retain independence, to prevent yourselves being occupied, it's a struggle to take back the narrative of who you are from the criminal. And unlike, say, Jack the Ripper, in a sort of Victorian sense, here you have Russia, who is a malevolent force, who is actively involved in also trying to manipulate the narrative about you at the very point where that crime is ongoing.
Yeah, definitely. And for example, the thing that triggered me recently is that I've read um, the annotation, the blurb for the translation of my book, nonfiction book about the invasion, The Language of War. It will be published in one of the European languages forthcoming. And in the annotation, it has the term victim, Ukraine as a victim. And this really triggered me because this is one of the things that my book is fighting against. And this is one of the most important narratives that we are trying to pursue or to share, that Ukraine is not a victim. Ukraine is mm, fighter. Ukraine is the subject for this whole fight and clash. And I think this is just one of the small examples of how this small accents, small nuances um, of the meaning of how it works. And the same thing with the in this recent translation that not all the translators, for example, use the occupation. They're using the deliberation for Ukrainian territories. And I think this is really important, each time underlining that it is about the occupation, because we know what kind of occupation is made by Russians. And I think this is really important to realize that Russia has been manipulating about the whole narrative about its I would not say enemies of Russia. I would say the opposite sides or something. And it's been for decades that they're manipulating with this with these ideas. And one of the funniest recent examples is that Patriarch Kirill used the term something about the demonic or satanic views of Estonians on the Russian church. And this is hilarious because when Estonia realizes that Russian Orthodox Church is the part of their KGB machine, and this is just the instrument for the hybrid warfare, and they're trying to defend themselves. So you have the most powerful person in the Russian Orthodox Church who blames the whole country for and having it demonic satanic label. And this is just the same thing that they've been doing, using all these Nazis, fascist labels, etc., when they see that somebody is not sharing their views. And this is just so funny to see it, that they're still using the same instrument for making narrative for this particular example.
And it's an extraordinary process, isn't it? Because that labeling process that happens in propaganda is kind of mirrored in a way by Western coverage, which focuses on often the role of so-called great men or ungreat men in terms of Putin. But it tends to apportion the blame for the violence, the coercion, the invasion itself, and places that against sort of key figures. But that kind of glosses over the fact that actually you have hundreds of thousands of people engaged in a sort of systematic mass scale violence, which is not just the Russian state, but hundreds of thousands, if not millions, are complicit in that violence. Eh, What's your feeling about that? And what's the role of literature to try to counter that idea of labeling and apportioning blame just to a small number of individuals?
Um, I don't know. It's just you have to do your own job, no matter what, and you're supposed to run this marathon. And this is really interesting because when the European continent is facing the now the hot phase of the hybrid warfare against Russia, seeing all these drones and seeing all these provocations in different countries, but on the daily basis, I hope they are realizing that the relevance of the Ukrainian experience and what the thing that we've said and the thing that we've experienced on our own. And I think this is the function of literature to keep on going and to tell the stories and unfortunately, at a certain point, they will have a new relevance for the wider audience, and that's how it works. And I think this is just the talking about the engagement of hundreds of thousands or millions of Russians into the system. This is a really important question because if we will have a look on the official statistics of the general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces, we will see that now it's more than 1 million of Russians that were either injured heavily or killed on the Ukrainian territory. And these are only those who are either injured or killed. But we could imagine how many more of them are on the Ukrainian territories. And on the other hand, we would realize that the last point was that they have more than five dozens. Can I tell this in English? Can I say it? Five dozens or more than
Yes.
50, more than 50 points for uh, initiating the Shahed attacks across Russia. And we could imagine the scale of the infrastructure for just pushing these Shaheds on Ukraine. The morning that we are talking, Russia has sent 650 Shaheds this night on the Ukrainian territory. And these Shaheds are produced by Russians and they are assembled on their factories and plants. And we are talking about millions of Russians who are involved in the direct supplies for the Russian armed forces on the daily basis.
This is it. It's not the activity of a handful. And indeed, at some point this year, Karamurza's assertion that it was only ethnic minorities that are committing the war crimes belies the reality that, there are tens of thousands of engineers and pilots, highly trained ethnic Russian, who are committing these barbaric acts. Let's move to something more positive, which is the reason Ukraine is fighting. One of the reasons. And it's not just to protect, cities, uh, territory, etc. It's also to protect literature, culture, language itself, and identity. Let's turn to your choices of Ukrainian authors, artists, and film, so we can share some of these treasures with the audience.
I think it was really important year in terms of film industry. We've got a really nice comedy that has been ongoing production for almost 10 years. It's called Your Universe. And this is a really nice sci-fi futuristic romantic, heartwarming comedy. And this is not the thing that one would expect from the Ukrainian filmmakers, but I really like it. And it became a huge success for the audience. I guess this is fifth or sixth week that it's still in, you could watch it in the movie theaters no matter that Avatar 3 appeared in the movies, in the cinemas right now. I think this is vital to watch 2000 meters to Andreevka made by Mstislav Chernov. And this is really an important movie. And I really support the idea that it totally changes the way that you are speaking about the war, and this is not the optics of the estrangement, This is the optics of a filmmaker who is inside of the war and who's going together with the servicemen to Andriivka. And there is another movie that is available on Netflix. It's called Antarctic. It is made by famous Ukrainian YouTube vlogger Anton Ptushkin. And this guy, he spent several days in the Ukrainian station in Antarctic. Anton Tushkin, yeah. So he spent several days in Antarctic on Vernadsky station, which is the Ukrainian station in this area. And this is just fascinating that he's telling the story of Vernadsky station. For example, it was originally it was the British base, and then they've sold it to Ukrainians, and how it's organized for people who are staying there for 1 year during the expedition. So I think this is my top three for Ukrainian movies for this year.
Fantastic. And I'm guessing authors are going to be a little bit more difficult in that if you name a modern author, perhaps you're at risk of, upsetting friends and colleagues. Um, or it may be safer to choose people who are no longer with us. But what would be your choice if you wanted a Western audience to really, understand, let's say, the Ukrainian mindset and get a taster of Ukrainian literature?
That was a really successful year for Ukrainian veteran writer Artur Dron, and he was he was in his early 20s when he enlisted in the armed forces in the early days of the invasion, and he served in the infantry, and he wrote the collection of poems called "We Were Here," and it's available in English. And he wrote the first collection of essays called "Hemingway Doesn't Know Anything." And it became a huge hit in Ukraine, and it has a really fascinating formal structure, composition, and it has a really nice bunch of senses, and it pretty changes the optics that you see the classical writings about the war, and it in a way changes the narrative of how we perceive the idea of how to talk about the invasion. And it's just a great collection of essays, and I think it will be published shortly in English as well.
Yes, I can see we've got We Were Here translated by also an incredible talent, Yulia Musalkowska. It looks like it's already available to purchase in English. That particular part of his output, but no, absolutely
It's
fantastic.
really interesting. It's really interesting to read the collection of poetry and then to read the collection of nonfiction, because sometimes they reflect on each other, and they're adding the subplots to each other. And there is the comment for the poem in the collection of essays, and that's a really strong voice. And the originality of this voice is striking.
Fantastic. And this is going to be great. I have not read it at this point, so that'll be something very much to look forward to discovering that. And then the last one, artist. Actually, quite a few people have declined to name an artist because they're like, I'm not sure. But do you have Ukrainian artist who stands out for you that you'd like a Western
There are a
audience?
lot of them. Yeah, I can name, for example, Oleksandr. His family name is Mann, and his name is Olexa, and he's doing just amazing series of artworks. You can find him on Facebook, and he's making a really interesting mm, mixture of figurative and abstract paintings, and it gives you the idea of the atmosphere and of Ukrainian mood right now, I would say. And it's really elaborated, and it's striking in terms of the visuals, as well as he made throughout several last years. He's been working on the non-verbal graphic novel called Codex, and you could find it as well on his Facebook page. And it's really amazing because it's just systematic in the way the series is produced. I would recommend to have a look at Kostiantyn Zorkin. That's Zorkin, and this is the artist from Kharkiv, and he has developed one of the greatest artistic turns throughout the invasion. And he usually works with wood and sculpture, making the magical objects that he would usually use in his performances. But now he enlarged it, working with the theatrical productions, moving to um, sculptures that look like paintings made out of wood, or some paintings, and he made a beautiful graphic novel as well that is available. It's called Imane Mista, in the name of the city, and this is just an amazing artwork, just top graphic novel, totally drowning you in it, in his artistic world. So yeah, I would name these two guys as
And
my
that
top.
it's not published yet, but you say you can get a taster of it at least from his, I guess, Instagram and
In the name of the city.
in the name suit. That is published, is it? Is that available?
In the name of the city is published, and the Codex by Alexaman is
Mhm.
under development for being the book shortly.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put all those links into the description of the video. I'm immensely grateful that you could come on, especially given you've got a packed day and the electricity's out and goodness knows all the other challenges that everyone has to deal with.
That's always my pleasure, Jonathan.
Massive pleasure. I would wish you a peaceful and restful holiday. I know with the neighbours that you have, there will be neither peace nor rest, I expect, but I certainly will be thinking of you at this time and wishing you that you can make the best of the situation that you're in.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
I'm proud to say that this series of Ukrainian Advent interviews is supported by the Steel Porcupine, a unique and powerful film about a country that refuses to lie down, a people who turn themselves into a fortress of needles when Russian tanks rolled in. The Steel Porcupine is an unforgettable cinematic experience that exposes Russia's campaign of extermination in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people's spirit to resist and prevail. It follows soldiers, volunteers, and ordinary people who decided that survival meant resistance, not submission. Introduced by Nate Vance, a former US Marine who fought for 3 years in Ukraine's defense, this documentary moves from the Bucha massacre to genocide endorsing Russian state propaganda media. The Steel Porcupine is a love letter to Ukraine and a battle cry. It is free to watch and has already had a great impact on policymakers as well as activists. There is, of course, a link in the description of this video and in the comments as well. You can get to the website where you can see both the trailer and the film for free. Created by the makers of the acclaimed To the Zero Line, this is another film about humanity that clearly states there is no such thing as neutrality when war crimes are being committed systematically by Russia and on a scale in Europe only comparable to World War II. Set to a haunting soundtrack featuring music by Philip Glass and blending rare archival footage with original material. It is an impactful work of art and storytelling, as well as being informative. I strongly recommend you watch it, but even the trailer itself is compelling.
I feel terrible about it because Ukraine is a very important country, and I feel a personal stake because I got them to agree to give up their nuclear weapons, and none of them believe that Russia would have pulled this stunt if Ukraine still had their weapons. And I believe Europe and the United States should continue to support Ukraine. There may come a time when the Ukrainian government believes that they can think of a peace agreement they could live with, but I don't think the rest of us should cut and run on them.
Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military have been underestimated for a period of several years now. And ultimately, I'm convinced from my reflections in observing from an intelligence standpoint that they will fight with their bare hands if they have to, if they don't have terms that are acceptable to an enduring peace.
So this is a design for a 3D printed drone frame. The engines are mounted here. The drone motors are mounted here and here and here. What I can do is export these shapes into the slicer.
This film has absolute moral clarity. It does not both sides the war. It does not use neutral language. This is a film that says clearly who invaded whom, who is killing whom, and who is standing on their own land, fighting back, showing why Ukrainians will bleed for every meter. This film is not meant to comfort you. It's meant to arm you with clarity, with solidarity, and with the stubborn, spiky hope that democracies can still fight back and win.
Children are not stupid. They're just small, right? They're small versions of us. They know exactly who the threat is. There's almost no families within Ukraine who have not lost a family member or have had a family member maimed by Putin and his army.
The Ukrainian people are very resourceful and they're very determined, and they've got a very good reason to be determined. You know, Russia wants to exterminate the Ukrainian nation and just enslave it and absorb it. So they've got every reason to do everything necessary to win this war.
Putin was super clear when he started this war that the existence of Ukraine as a sovereign and free country was an unacceptable affront to Russian security. He will not stop until Ukraine isn't a country anymore.
We have to put Ukraine in a position of strength, that it has the means to fortify and protect itself from the economic survival to the military resilience. It's basically turning Ukraine into a steel porcupine that is indigestible for potential invaders.
Poets have spent their entire lives trying to explain the horrors of war. I am no poet. Anyone who has seen what I have seen would probably think differently about the situation in Ukraine and what the Russians are doing.